Ladies and gentlemen, more than welcome to today's Pan-European Working Group meeting, which is a cooperation event, this time together with the Spinelli-Gruppe of the European Parliament, which I have the honor to chair for 9 months exactly in our rotation principle. The Spinelli-Gruppe would be the parliamentary group on European level of UEF, of the Federalists Union on European level, and the treaty reform is very much a core issue of the Federalists Union. And even on same level, an important cooperation partner today is the Hanns Seidel Stiftung. I'm more than grateful that Hanns Seidel Stiftung, Hanns Seidel Federation shows its strength, also its inclusivity, I would say, and its integrative approach by supporting today's event and by cooperating with today's event, since it's really a multi-partisan event. Usually our Pan-European Working Group events are multi-partisan, but this time maybe more different political parties, political groups, also of the European Parliament, would be represented than ever. I'm also more than happy to see a school class from my constituency, my home country, Austria, from the Handelsakademie in Mödling, led by Professor Bayer. I'm more than happy to have all of you here. And I thank the interpreters for being with us all the time, also today for a translation in German, English and French. And on the one side, it's something special to have it multi-partisan. On the other side, it's also, I would say, relevant for the issue itself, because we talk about EU treaty reform today, namely EU reform, and an EU reform is clearly something nearly all citizens of the European Union, all European Union citizens want to have in place. That doesn't mean that everybody means exactly the same thing by a EU reform, but people want to have it, and if it shall happen, then it can only happen when many different political parties would discuss it, and many officials on different political levels and in different institutions. I'm more than happy that my dear colleague Matej Tonin from Slovenia will lead today's session. I will hand over the moderation to him in a second, because I have an obligatory meeting in the daily parliamentary business, not in EU treaty reform business, at 6:30. That's why I will have to leave in half an hour. But we will have a good discussion, and it's live streamed. Also welcome to those who watch the live stream, and it's also taped, so also in the future this important discussion, I would say, because it's about EU reform, will be saved. I've just heard that our long-term colleague Bernd Posselt himself knew Mr. Spinelli personally, and that's something. Maybe they were the only in the room who knew Mr. Spinelli in person, the group after whom, the person after whom this group is named. Before I will hand over to Matej Tonin, I will hand over to Thomas Leb from Hanns Seidel Stiftung, which is a cooperation partner of today's event, and I'm more than thankful for that. And I want you to ask for some introductory remarks from your side. Thomas Leb.
Yes, thank you very much, Lukas Mandl, for having us as co-host of this event. We're very happy to be here in the second cooperation of this event of the Pan-European Union Spinelli Group and also Hanns Seidel Foundation. And I'd like to welcome everyone here in the room and also online. It's a pleasure for us to join you. And I think we will have an excellent discussion on one of the most important issues, the EU reform, which will occupy not only politicians in the parliament, but the public discussions in the next few years, because we have a lot of pressure to get forward with the integration. So I will leave you with these opening remarks, and I think Matej Tonin will then lead you through the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matteo. I would kindly ask you to take over. Thank you for spontaneously being ready to chair that, because I have this negotiation at 6:30. Thank you again.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is a privilege to chair this discussion. It is a discussion about our future and if we are prepared for the future challenges. Definitely the biggest visible difference is between, let's say, Europe and the United States, how fast we are able to process our decisions. And probably these things have something to do with the European treaties. So I won't be too long. We decided that each panelist will have 3 minutes for the introductory speech, and then we will continue with the debate. So prepare questions, that the discussion will be very fruitful. So the first one on my list, they said that it will be Professor Andreas Kalina. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll change to German. Vielen herzlichen Dank für die Einladung. Ich freue mich sehr, hier vor dieser Runde und mit Ihnen sprechen zu können. Angefragt bin ich worden, um über Reformen zu sprechen, über den Reformbedarf, der ja drängender nicht sein könnte. Die Erweiterungen stehen an und die Verwerfungen in der globalen Konstellation machen den Handlungsbedarf aktueller denn je. Ich werde trotzdem nicht über konkrete Reformen sprechen, sondern als Advocatus Diaboli über eine Idee, die dahinter liegt oder liegen sollte. Und als Advocatus Diaboli deswegen, weil ich etwas überspitze und sage, dass ich hier für mehr europapolitischen Streit plädiere, der als eine Philosophie hinter den Reformen sein sollte. Denn der Ausgangspunkt, den wir heutzutage beobachten, ist, egal wo man in Europa hinschaut, wachsender Europaskeptizismus, Renationalisierungstendenzen. Und eine, wenn nicht die zentrale Wurzel in meinen Augen dafür, sind die Enttäuschungen der Bürgerinnen und Bürger über mangelnde Mitgestaltungsmöglichkeiten der EU. Vor allem über die Wahrnehmung dieser Mitgestaltungsmöglichkeiten und die Wahrnehmung einer gefühlten Lücke zwischen den Eliten auf der einen Seite und den Bürgerinnen und Bürgern auf der anderen Seite. Das ist auch der Fall bei der ordentlichen Gesetzgebung. Das ist der Fall im Hinblick auf die Konferenz zur Zukunft Europas, weil hier der Eindruck vorzuherrschen scheint, dass sehr viel versprochen worden ist, aber die Vorschläge irgendwo verpuffen. Und das ist auch der Fall, wenn man sich zumindest die deutschsprachigen Länder anschaut, bei der gescheiterten Spitzenkandidatur 2019. Und mein Punkt ist, dass die EU hier selbst sehr oft kontraproduktiv ist, weil sie regelmäßig Illusionen schürt, denen sie dann nicht genügt und nicht genügen kann. Ich bin insofern provokativ, weil ich sage, wir sollten eine Second-Best-Strategie bei den Reformen wählen. Das heißt, die Illusion beiseite legen, dass Bürgerinnen und Bürger die europäische Politik genauso mitgestalten können, wie sie es wünschen oder wie es im nationalen Rahmen der Fall ist. Und Second-Best deswegen, weil ich persönlich mir natürlich auch eine höchstmögliche Bürgerbeteiligung wünsche. Auf der anderen Seite bin ich Pragmatist genug, um zu sagen, im europäischen Mehrebenensystem, wo viele Ebenen, Interessen ausbalanciert werden müssen, funktioniert Demokratie nicht so wie in Schulbüchern. Ich sage es auch, dass man die Beteiligungsromantik, die man sehr oft an den Tag legt, auch beiseite legen sollte, weil die ist in diesem System zum Scheitern verurteilt. Und das Problem ist, dass immer wieder solche Versprechungen erfolgen und weil sie zwangsläufig enttäuscht werden, schürt das weiter Europaskepsis. Was tun? Und jetzt bin ich bei meinem zentralen Punkt. Ich finde, wir sollten in Europa die Kontroversität und Krawall beleben, damit sich Bürgerinnen und Bürger stärker in ihren Interessen vertreten fühlen. Das Problem ist nämlich, und das merken wir als Beobachter, dass europäische Entscheidungen eher monolithisch erscheinen. Das heißt, wenn wir uns das Parlament beispielsweise anschauen, die Tendenz zu übergroßen Mehrheiten mit einer breiten Bündnisbildung, die Triloglastigkeit der Verfahren. Und das führt dazu, dass die politische Willensbildung, die wir alle beobachten möchten als Bürgerinnen und Bürger, verschleiert wird. Wir wissen letztendlich nicht, wer wofür stand, wer hat sich letztendlich durchgesetzt. Und das führt dazu auf der Bevölkerungsebene, dass es ein Gefühl des Ausgeliefertseins gibt, der Einflusslosigkeit. Und andererseits, wenn man persönlich eine andere europapolitische Vorstellung hat als der Mainstream, wird man sehr schnell in eine Ecke abgeschoben, der was Antieuropäisches anhaftet, beziehungsweise man fühlt sich so. Und hier finde ich Krawall deswegen, weil je mehr Positionen ersichtlich werden, je mehr Entscheidungen in der Kontroversität abgebildet werden, umso mehr sieht man verschiedene einzelne Punkte. Es ist dann nicht mehr der Dualismus zwischen dafür oder dagegen, sondern man merkt, dass Politik durchaus gestaltbar ist, dass es Nuancen gibt und dass wirklich auch andere Positionen mit eingebracht worden sind. Wofür ich auch hier plädiere, ist mehr Responsivität der politischen Akteure. Die ist auch nicht der Fall. Und insgesamt, glaube ich, sollten wir als europäische Eliten, und da denke ich sowohl diejenigen in den Hochschulen wie auch die auf politischer Bühne, unseren eigenen Umgang mit sogenannter EU-Kritik hinterfragen und reflektieren. Weil nicht alles, was EU-Kritik ist europafeindlich und demokratiefeindlich, sondern umgekehrt. Europakritik kann durchaus demokratietheoretisch sein und es geht darum, Wettbewerb um die beste Lösung. Und da sollten auch kritische Stimmen zugelassen werden, die natürlich demokratisch und legitim sein müssen. Mein Plädoyer daher Diversifizierung der europäischen Politik muss uns bewusst sein, weil das spiegelt erst den europäischen Pluralismus wider. Und das ist die Grundlage dafür, dass der Wert der Partizipation von den Bürgern überhaupt anerkannt wird, dass Anknüpfungspunkte für die eigene Beteiligung gesehen werden, weil dann sehen wir erst, wofür es sich zu kämpfen lohnt europäisch, wenn da eine Anschlussfähigkeit ist. Und insofern wird Europa dann auch legitimer. Ganz kurz gesagt, mein Plädoyer für mehr europapolitischen Streit. Wenn man sich die Debatte im Europäischen Parlament anschaut, gibt es solche Stellschrauben, die da sind. Aber ich glaube, man sollte nicht von den Stellschrauben denken, sondern eine gesamte Philosophie drüber legen. Und das werde ich heute gern in die Diskussion einbringen. Vielen Dank für die Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you, Professor Kalina. Now we will turn to Klara Dobrev, member of the S&D.
Yes, thank you very much. And then, indeed, it's going to be an interesting discussion because I'm going to talk about the other side of this political arena, or let's say, to be brave. There is a Hungarian poem. If I translate it in a little bit easy way, then it would go that big things happen only if those willing are brave enough. And those willing were brave enough after the Second World War, when they said that we would like to have a European Union, an ever closer union, even if there were plenty of articles and plenty of research papers saying that it's no way that people who killed each other's family are going to sit around one table. They were brave enough when it was about the monetary union. Even in the 80s, you could read some articles and papers about how it's impossible that the French are going to give up their franc or the Germans are going to give up their Deutschmark, but they did it. And I'm telling this because I think that exactly now we are again on a turning point. We are in the 50s. We are around the Schuman Plan. We have never thought that it will happen, but unfortunately we just leaned back in our historical armchairs and we took a lot of issues for granted. We took democracy for granted. I'm coming from Hungary, a Hungarian opposition. And we saw how in 10 years you can just turn over human rights, rule of law. And that's what we see in America. And that's what we see in Europe with a growing far right. And we took Euro-Atlantic security network for granted. And now we are just shocked and looked around that we are not facing just threats from the East, from the Russian aggression, but now even from the West. So I think we are in a turning point. And I think that exactly these are the historical moments when you have to be brave enough. And as politicians, as political leaders, you have to show the hope and the future. And this is a moment for Europe. So what I would suggest is not simply a treaty change, because we know how difficult it is, hundreds of pages. We have to do it. I mean, I am very much for treaty change. But actually, I would like to go back to the idea, Spinelli, the new European Constitution. This is the moment when we can turn around and the majority of European people are going to be behind our back. We need a new European Constitution which unites us. And yes, I would love to see this European Constitution to be adopted by the single European referendum. I would be very happy to discuss this with you. Just three very important topics, what we do need and what it's very easy to explain to the European voters. We need, finally, a single voice for Europe in global affairs. We have almost 500 million people. We are number one in international trade. We are not weak at all, as we are frightened now. We need a single voice to be active on international affairs. We have to create, and you are right, Professor, we have to give back to the European citizens the feeling that they do influence European matters. Now, a lot of decisions happen behind the closed doors, especially in the Council, intergovernmental decisions. We have to give back this democracy to the European people. And yes, I have never thought 2 years ago, 3 years ago that I'm telling this, but I'm telling this now, that we have to ensure the security of the European people. So what I would stand for is this is the moment to be brave enough. I want to be brave enough. And this is the moment when we need a new European constitution for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara. Now we will move to the Professor Sven Simon.
Ja, danke schön. Ich denke, die meisten im Raum verstehen Deutsch, sodass ich mal auf Deutsch spreche. Ich teile ehrlich gesagt die Analyse von Herrn Kalina zu 100%. Also das Problem, was ich analysiere, ist, dass wir mit dem Lissabon-Vertrag eine politische Union geschaffen haben, aber das meiste findet im weitgehend apolitischen Modus statt. Darin liegt offenbar ein zentrales Problem der Legitimation und der Akzeptanz der Entscheidungen hier. Abgesehen davon, dass das System etwas weniger responsiv ist, also nicht so reagiert, dass man Mehrheiten, Minderheiten wählen und abwählen kann, ist es in der Tat so, dass wir keine Debatten führen darüber. Und die meisten Menschen akzeptieren demokratische Entscheidungen nicht deshalb, weil die Mehrheit durch Zufall irgendwann mal entscheidet, sondern weil die Mehrheit in Kenntnis und nach Auseinandersetzung mit den Argumenten der Minderheit entscheidet, da wir keine europäische Öffentlichkeit haben und das Parlament es auch nicht schafft, sich endlich mal zu reformieren, dass wir wirkliche Debatten haben und nicht diese dümmlichen Ein-Minuten-Statement-Geschichten, die wir hier machen. Das ist ein riesengroßes Problem, über das wir einfach nicht hinwegsehen dürfen. Gefallen hat mir natürlich auch dieser Begriff Beteiligungsromantik, die ich übernehmen werde, denn alles, was in der Richtung Citizen Panels oder Expert Groups oder dieser ganze Kram, der wird natürlich nicht zur Legitimation beitragen, ganz im Gegenteil. Wir sind mit der parlamentarischen repräsentativen Demokratie sehr, sehr erfolgreich gewesen, deshalb sollten wir sie nicht über Bord werfen. Gleichwohl bin ich der Auffassung, dass der Zeitpunkt gekommen ist, die Verträge zu überarbeiten, und zwar uneingeschränkt proeuropäisch zu überarbeiten. Wir brauchen einen riesigen Schritt europäischer Integration nach vorne im Umfang von Schuman. Da stimme ich mit Clara Dobrev zu. Genau diese Weitsicht brauchen wir, denn die Europäische Union ist doch nun offensichtlich die einzig realistische Größe für die Europäer, um auf der Welt noch irgendeine Rolle zu spielen. Und deshalb müssen wir die Verträge ändern, was die Institutionen anbelangt, um handlungsfähig zu werden. Und dann haben wir ein paar Politikfelder, auch in dem Bericht, an dem ich mitgearbeitet habe, Artikel 48 Bericht, denn seit dem Lissabon-Vertrag hat das Parlament das Recht, Änderungen zu den Verträgen vorzuschlagen. Wir brauchen eine voll funktionsfähige Energieunion, wir brauchen eine Kapital- und Bankenunion, wir brauchen eine Rüstungs- und eine Verteidigungsunion, wir müssen besser zusammenarbeiten bei der Erforschung und Anwendung künstlicher Intelligenz und wir müssen natürlich auch das Thema Migration als ein großes Thema gemeinsam europäisch lösen. Das alles wird nur funktionieren über demokratische Beteiligung und deshalb ist es gut, dass das Europäische Parlament weiterhin der Treiber der europäischen Integration ist. Das war es auch immer so. Und deshalb komme ich zu der Conclusio sozusagen, dass wir trotz aller Defizite, die es bei der Organisation von Demokratie auf supranationaler Ebene noch gibt, dieses Projekt nach vorne treiben müssen und da, wo es eben noch nicht so funktioniert, Responsivität, schwere Veränderbarkeit von Unionsrecht, keine Debatten, keinen öffentlichen Austausch, wo es dann an Legitimation fehlt, da müssen wir einfach nachschärfen und es verbessern. Ich habe viel Hoffnung, dass zum Beispiel durch künstliche Intelligenz und die direkte AI-Übersetzung von Sprachen eine der größten Hürden, die wir Europäer eben immer noch haben, bei der Kommunikation, aber auch bei der Nutzung von Skaleneffekten wirtschaftlich, wir einen riesigen Schritt vorankommen und in diesem Sinne setze ich mich auch hier im Haus ein.
Thank you, Sven. Now we will move to Daniel Freund, member of the Green Political Group, please.
Thanks, and thanks, Lukas, for bringing all of us together here today. I agree that the Union is probably at a turning point when we see that the security guarantees under which, well, first West, now all of Europe has lived since the Second World War are no longer reliable. And I think that puts us in a completely new situation where also in the area of defense, either we unite, either we do this together, or the role of Europe is going to be continued decline. Others, Russia, the US, China, are not going to listen to individual small member states. Then we cannot defend our interests, we cannot defend our values, we cannot defend our security in that world. The only way is to do that together. Well, and if you think that through, if the perspective is that we're going to have a joint European army, however, first we're going to cooperate and we're going to buy together because it's cheaper and all that. But the aim has to be that there is one unity army in Europe, because at the end of the day, all these discussions that we have now to slightly increase defense budgets a bit everywhere, at the end of the day, we're not going to scare off Putin and others by increasing the Estonian defense budget, or the Lithuanian one, and the Latvian one, and the Hungarian one, and the Slovak. No, ultimately, European defense only works collectively. But then if you have a European army, you need a chain of command. You need someone in charge. And that cannot be 27. There cannot be an army that is ultimately commanded by a unanimous vote of the 27. And that needs such structural reforms that we need to look at the treaties again. We need to look at the role of the parliament that it is going to have in all that. And obviously this has repercussions in pretty much every area, also beyond defense. But I think this is inevitable. What I find frustrating is I recently looked at statements of German Chancellor 40 years back, and they have all been saying Europe needs to speak with one voice. I heard it from Kohl, from Schröder, from Merkel, and now Merz and his people are saying the same thing. Everyone's always saying, but Europe really needs to speak with one voice. But how do you make that Europe speaks with one voice? Well, you need to get rid of unanimity on foreign policy, for example. That needs treaty change. But the debate that we have among the heads of state and government is always, no, but now we have crisis, now is not the time to change the treaties. And last year, and during COVID, it was not the time to change the treaties. And during the Brexit debate, it was not the time to change the treaties. And during the migration and the Euro crisis, it was not the time to change the treaties. I don't think we're ever going to have such a stable and boring international environment. Now we can take some time to discuss treaty reform. But if we do not discuss treaty reform, we're going to go from crisis to crisis, and Europe is not going to be able to actually really deal with that in a democratic way, not just sidelining us here in the parliament, not just doing the lowest common denominator that even Viktor Orban can somehow agree to. No, I think it's a debate that we have to have. I think now is as good a moment as any. We are going to have a new MFF, 7-year budget discussion on the way. And I think combining the debate on where are we going to go financially, what are we going to spend money on over the next decade, roughly, and which institutions, which democratic participation are we going to have on that, for me, this should go together, and we should have that treaty reform together with a budget discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freund. All keynote speakers were very frank, very short. So in the beginning, I would like to offer first the chance to have a short remarks to others, members of the European Parliament, and of course to anybody else who wishes. So please, you can have.
Ja, vielen Dank. Ich versuche es sehr kurz zu machen. Aber trotzdem, ich möchte sagen, ich bin absolut der Meinung von Daniel Freund. Ich meine, ich bin seit 25 Jahren Parteivorstandsmitglied der CSU. Da gibt es sehr unterschiedliche Meinungen, aber ich bin absolut ein radikaler Europäer wie Daniel Freund. Und ich möchte das hier auch kurz begründen. Ich habe seit 1979, seit Louis Weiss hier die erste Eröffnungsrede gehalten hat, an den Straßburger Plenarsitzungen des Parlaments teilgenommen, 45 Jahre. Alle 2, 3 Jahre gab es eine Vertragsreform von 1979 bis 2000, alle 2-3 Jahre, 4 Jahre mal, 5 Jahre höchstens. Und jedes Mal gab es mehr Parlamentsrechte und weniger Einstimmigkeit. 1979 war nur Einstimmigkeit und keine Parlamentsrechte. Jetzt haben wir sehr viele Parlamentsrechte und sehr wenig Einstimmigkeit. Nur seit 25 Jahren treten wir auf der Stelle. Und das wird jetzt brandgefährlich im Moment, weil wir haben eine Situation, ich sage es jetzt wegen der Zeit sehr knapp und sehr plakativ, die Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika fallen aus und das Vakuum kann nur ausgefüllt werden durch die Vereinigten Staaten von Europa. Und die halte ich für so gefährdet wie nie, aber aus ganz anderen Gründen als Sie, Herr Kallina. Die Bürger, bei dem letzten Europarometer hat man es wieder gesehen, sind viel, viel europäischer als die sogenannten Eliten. Ich sehe es genau umgekehrt wie Sie. Ich meine, wir kennen uns gut und ich wusste schon, Ihnen gelingt es, mich zu provozieren. Ich sehe es genau umgekehrt. Die Eliten sind es, die sogenannten, die blockieren. Und ich kann Ihnen sagen, von 2 Seiten noch dazu. Die eine Seite, die will Europa blockieren à la Orban, indem sie das Einstimmigkeitsprinzip missbraucht im Auftrag Moskaus. Und auf der anderen Seite haben wir aber, und das muss man auch sehen, sogenannte gute Europäer. Und die sind fast noch gefährlicher. Das ist nämlich die Koalition der Willigen, wenn ich das sagen darf. Die Koalition der Willigen gefährdet Europa. Im Moment ist es ganz gut, dass die der Ukraine helfen. Da kann man nicht auf eine Vertragsreform warten, da bin ich sofort mit dabei. Aber die Briten, wenn man genau sieht, was Herr Stammer zum Beispiel jetzt in Paris gesagt hat, beim 3. sogenannten Gipfel, der überhaupt keine Legitimation hat, irgendwas zu entscheiden, da hat er ganz wörtlich gesagt, das größere Europa wird sich durchsetzen, aber ohne die Institutionen. Und er hat in einem Interview ganz offen die Institutionen in Frage gestellt. Man kann außerhalb der Institutionen mal handeln. Dann ist es aber weder nachhaltig noch demokratisch kontrolliert. Und es gefährdet die Integration. Deshalb Koalition der Willigen, meinetwegen, um die Ukraine zu retten, kann man sich auch auf den Kopf stellen. Aber wir müssen es so schnell wie möglich, müssen wir es in die Institutionen hinüberbringen. Und das ist von Seiten der meisten nationalen Regierungen und auch der meisten Parteiverantwortlichen, meine eigenen eingeschlossen, nicht geplant. Und da muss man einfach wirklich im Parlament, und das ist der Punkt, Herr Kallina, da muss das Parlament mit riesiger Mehrheit operieren. Die Kontroverse, die Sie fordern, die gab es hier immer, früher sogar zum Teil mehr. Und ich bin für die Kontroverse in politischen Fragen. Aber im deutschen Parlament diskutiert man doch auch nicht, ob man Deutschland will, oder im tschechischen Parlament, ob man Tschechische Republik will. Aber wir müssen mit riesiger Mehrheit für die europäische Integration und für die Gemeinschaftsmethode kämpfen. Meinetwegen auch kontrovers, aber mit riesiger Mehrheit, dann können wir uns vielleicht durchsetzen. Und der Streit muss in den Sachfragen stattfinden. Klimapolitik oder so, da kann man sich streiten.
Thank you very much for your comments, Mr. Posselt. I think you underlined the crucial question. So, the whole panelists were talking why we need change in a content-wise. But how to reach the change of treaties, it's much more difficult, as you said. There are many obstacles. So one of the questions would be very interesting to hear from the panelists is how to reach those treaty necessary reforms in a current circumstances. But before they will answer, I would like to give the opportunity, as I said, to other MEPs who are present here if they wish, and to other students to ask the questions. So we will go with the round of 3 questions, and then will be a reaction, and again 3 questions. Yeah. Oh, if they are still thinking about the questions, so you can go with the introductions for 3 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I would like to give you two good reasons to revise the treaty, which is the topic of tonight, if I am not mistaken. The first is that, three reasons I give you. The first that we are witnessing every day the inefficiency of the current union with the current member states. The sense that each time that we are confronted with the new challenges, such as new challenges very politically sensitive, we are confronted with the blackmailing or delaying tactics of this or that member. And that happens, it has happened for 3 years, for example, on the issue of sanctions against Russia, where we had to negotiate at length each time with one member state. In this case was Viktor Orban, but there can be others who would do the same in other files, simply because unanimity is required in sanction against third countries, which is an absurdity if you think that sanctions are also linked somehow to the notion of trade economic policy, and that trade policy is totally communitarized, as we know. So the first that we have the example today that still we are delayed with unanimity in field where we need to move to a more efficient decision-making system. The rule of law and Article 7 is another example. The second reason is that we have all committed in this House, in the Council, to unify the continent. We all say that we want to let Ukraine become a member of the European Union. At least officially, the main political groups in this House, they have said this. We say that we want to accelerate the process of the Western Balkan accession to the European Union. And I think that the main political forces officially all stand for this position. Well, I mean, if things do not work properly with 27 member states, how they could improve without any reform once the member states are 34, 35. So there is a clear challenge linked to the issue of enlargement that obliges us to revise our common policies, to try to exploit the treaty as they are, but certainly we also to modify the treaty to ensure more efficiency and more speediness in the decision-making process. The last point, and I stop here, is that in the history of the European Union, and those who have preceded us, I think that they were pretty wise, wiser than some of us today, there has never been one enlargement which hasn't been accompanied or followed by a reform of the system. And this is the first time, would be the first time in history of the European Union where we move ahead with with enlargement which will have a massive impact on the functioning of the European Union, on the budget of the European Union, the common policy of the European Union, without changing the treaty. And this is why we have to insist. The President of the Commission has taken the commitment to table proposal on this. We have presented a comprehensive revision treaty proposal in last term. We have to insist because I think we have also to draw the good lesson from the history that has brought us here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gozzi, and now it's your turn. Who wants to speak first with the questions? Still no questions? Then I will...
If there are no voluntaries, you were forced by your professor.
Yeah. But then we will do the second round among the panelists with the hard questions. So we were quite aligned in identifying where the problems are and what we have to do. So, and my question is how to do treaty reforms. This is the thing you skipped in your initial remarks. So how to do it, how to avoid this unanimity clause and so on. This will be question number one for all of you. And another additional question is there. Please, you have a floor.
Kann man mich hören? Ja. Daniel Bayer, ich bin Lehrer aus Österreich und hätte jetzt die konkrete Frage, weil die Abschaffung des Einstimmigkeitsprinzips im Rat der EU ist ja wirklich schon eine Forderung, seitdem ich auch das unterrichte. Und mich würde jetzt interessieren, wie kann man die Mitgliedstaaten überzeugen? Also wenn jetzt zum Beispiel die FPÖ in Österreich die Regierung angeführt hätte, und es hat ja wirklich danach ausgesehen, dann hätten wir jetzt schon den zweiten Mitgliedstaat, der das energisch blockiert, neben eben Viktor Orban. Das Gleiche gilt in Deutschland mit der AfD. Und also ich denke, wir müssten jetzt sehr schnell handeln und würde gerne konkret wissen, wie können wir das jetzt einfach umsetzen?
Okay, this time we'll start with Mr. Freund.
First of all, I would say, you know, as much as I politically fight with Mr. Orban, I think he is one of the best campaigners out there for getting rid of unanimity. Because he makes everyone else understand that we cannot function like that. And I think ultimately the debate that we have to win for many of the heads of state and government, you know, they see this veto as the ultimate insurance of their sovereignty. Of, you know, when push comes to shove, they can defend their national interest with the help of this veto. But what countries are realizing more and more, for example, the countries in the Balkans, if Putin eventually, because, you know, the US no longer guarantees the security in Ukraine or something, you know, if Putin is emboldened enough and ultimately starts a hybrid operation in the Baltics somewhere, then they can no longer rely that their security is protected by the other EU members because there is a veto in the hand of Orban, or, you know, if an FPÖ government comes along or someone else. So what used to maybe in their conception to be the ultimate insurance becomes a danger for all of our security. And I think that's the debate that we have to win. Technically then, I think there's three elements that, you know, what you say is, yeah, we discuss it, but we have also, and that was also said, in the past always made those steps. We have reduced unanimity quite ones. So what can we do to make it more likely that we win? One, have a larger package of reforms, not just, you know, let's get rid of unanimity on sanctions as a simple question. I think there will always be one or other member state against, but a big package allows trading. Second, money. If we discuss budget, MFF at the same time, I think that facilitates compromise as well. And third, I would say, well, on those reforms where a group of countries can move ahead, you know, enhanced cooperation style, as we have done on Schengen, as we have done on the Euro, as we have done on the European Public Prosecutor, you know, let's think about that. And sometimes just reflecting on it creates enough fear of missing out so that ultimately everyone is on board.
Madam Dobrev.
Yes, let me push a little bit the discussion in a different era, because here we, in this panel, we do agree on treaty change. We are strong European federalists, United States of Europe. I think even if you close the doors and don't give us anything to drink or eat, even within a few hours we are ready to verbalize and write down exactly the form of the treaty change. That's not the question, I think. The question is, how do you accept it? And we are in a democracy, in a parliamentary democracy, and we know exactly that there are some countries where it's needed a referendum for that. There are some countries where the government is going to block that. So how do you put the people on your side? We as politicians, we can go just as far as the people will follow us, because at the end of the day, they have to vote. So when I'm talking about creating and using finally this crisis, not surviving simply and pushing everything under the table, not now because it's migration crisis, not now because it's COVID, you were absolutely right, Danielle, but finally to use and see how people, how desperate they are. And the only solution for this desperation for the problems is a more united Europe. When I'm talking about the European Constitution and the European referenda, it's exactly, I think, the only tool to bring the people on board. If we talk about the technical issues, which are very important, because at the end of the day we have to be to formulate a legal text, so that's definitely very important. But without creating this political power, we are not going to succeed. And I fully agree with you, because we really have the momentum. We have the momentum because people are feeling frightened, they are desperate, they are worried about their not only physical security, but the security of their homes, jobs, and living standards, but they are on the side of Europe, the majority of them. And if we do not act now, then with all these social media attacks we have from the United States, with all this hybrid war we have from China and Russia, we might lose the people's voice and the people being behind us. So I think the most important question we have to answer is not exactly the paragraphs, because with that we will deal how we put the people behind our back. And I think for that is the Constitution the solution.
Professor Kalina.
Vielen Dank. Es sind jetzt mehrere Baustellen aufgemacht worden, die ich aufgreifen möchte. Ja, es ist höchste Zeit für eine Vertragsänderung. Einer muss vorangehen, die anderen müssen mitkommen. Wer wagt sich als Erster vorauszugehen, ist die große Frage. Ich glaube, wir sollten allerdings nicht zögern, weil sehr vieles, was das Parlament vorgeschlagen hat und was auch in den Debatten ist, kann man sogar ohne eine Vertragsveränderung durchsetzen. Und das sollten Sie sich wagen, hier diese Schritte vorangehen, weil man kann an vielen Stellschrauben auch heute schon drehen. Das ist Punkt 1. Punkt 2, Vertragsveränderung. Ich bin sehr knapp wegen der Zeit. Man müsste sich überlegen, inwiefern man bei einer Vertragsveränderung jetzt viel mehr Richtung differenzierte Integration geht, mit Opt-outs, die eine gewisse Zeit gelten und die dann aufgehoben werden können, um wirklich Staaten in der 27 mitzunehmen, die jetzt wackeln. Das ist eine andere Diskussion. Aber ich möchte, was Herr Posselt aufgegriffen hat, nochmal auf den Streit zurückkommen. Ja, Sie haben politische Kontroversen auf der parlamentarischen Bühne, aber die kommen nicht so in den Öffentlichkeiten an, weil wir keine europäische Öffentlichkeit haben. Wir müssen uns überlegen, wie transportieren wir das besser. Und deswegen mein Plädoyer für den Streit. Ich versuche es ganz knapp, aber bildhaft aufzuziehen. Es gab einen US-amerikanischen Wirtschaftswissenschaftler, Albert O. Hirschman, und Hirschman hat sich Gedanken darüber gemacht, wie sind die Verhaltensweisen von Menschen in Organisationen, in Unternehmen. Und das kann man auf Europa transportieren. Hirschman hat 3 Kategorien gehabt. Er hat Loyalität, Exit und Voice gehabt. Und was hat er erzählt? Er hat gesagt, es braucht Loyalität. Wenn es keine Loyalität hat, braucht es Voice. Sonst gibt es Exit, auf Europa angewendet. Die Loyalität haben wir seit der Aufkündigung des Permissive-Konsensus in den 90er Jahren nicht mehr. Voice, also die Partizipation der Menschen, ist sehr begrenzt und stattdessen wählen die Bürgerinnen und Bürger Exit. Exit in dem Sinne, dass sie Desinteresse an europäischer Politik haben, dass sie sich nicht einbringen im besseren Fall, im schlechteren Fall Europaskeptizismus und Europafeindlichkeit. Und in dieser Trias zwischen Voice, Exit und Loyalität müssen wir schauen, was erreichen wir am schnellsten. Loyalität wird langfristig aufgebaut, das schaffen wir nicht. Wir brauchen Voice, wir müssen die Bürger animieren, sich einzubringen, sich mitzugestalten in den Alltagsfragen und dann merken sie, Brüssel ist nicht so das Raumschiff, das abgehoben ist, sondern die machen Politik mit uns und für uns. Und dann tragen die Bürger auch die Vertragsreformen leichter mit und dann hat man auch größere Chancen, in Referenden die durchzubringen. Insofern wieder die Brücke zurück zu dem politischen Streit. Aber ja, wir brauchen die Reformen und jetzt ohne die Diskussion zu sprengen. Ich glaube, wir sollten bei den Reformen tatsächlich auch die heilige Kuh der Ever Closer Union hinterfragen. Insofern, wenn wir plädieren, dass Europa pluralistisch ist, Vielfalt in der Einheit, dann sollten wir auch in den Debatten zulassen, dass es legitime Gegenentwürfe zur immer engeren Union gibt. Wir haben das beim Tusk-Cameron-Papier gesehen. Ich glaube, da könnten wir viele Leute abholen, wenn wir gemeinsam offen über die Finalität sprechen, so sehr es mir als Föderalisten wehtut, das zur Disposition zu stellen. Aber in einer Demokratie, die pluralistisch sein möchte, die legitim sein möchte, sollte die Finalität tatsächlich auf der Basis der Werte diskutiert werden und deswegen auch die Ever Closer Union sollte zumindest in den Debatten zur Disposition gestellt werden, auch wenn es mir persönlich wehtut.
Colleague Simon.
Yes. I mean, from my analysis, it is mainly a lack of political leadership what we face in the governments, heads of state and government, people. And it's not only the usual suspects. The former coalition, or the outgoing coalition in Germany, for example, they wrote in their coalition treaty, we are in favor of a federal state of Europe. And there was a minister from the Greens for European affairs. She nearly never appeared. She didn't have any kind of proposal. She didn't support treaty change, not at all. The whole coalition was a total failure. So it's not only the usual suspects. It is the truth also that I think 80%, round about 80% of the decisions are taken by majority vote. My fourth recommendation would be don't overstretch it. And when we speak, in my opinion, too much about foreign policy. And when I ask where would you like to reduce the unanimous voting procedure, then it's usually the most sensitive policy fields which we touch, namely the sanctions, foreign policy, and that is very problematic because we are here more divided than in any other policy field. Imagine we would have a European Minister for Foreign Affairs from Ireland, and she deals with Israel and Palestine. That would not be accepted in Germany, not acceptable at all. Very far away from each other, for example, that only one example. So my recommendation is show the added value, make it visible, talk about the situations that the Europeans have been 20% of the world population at the beginning of the 20th century. Today we are 7%, we'll be 5%. So if we don't come up and work together and enhance our capability to act, it won't work. And then I would simply go, like it was already proposed, maybe the 6 founding states plus Spain or so, and whoever wants, step by step, like we did with the euro, like we did with Schengen, and also be honest. For example, when we speak about the energy policy, the export control of the arms regime, or migration, Germany is very alone, very isolated. They don't want European solutions. They always want their own solutions. That is a problem. It's not only, we are not facing, and here we lie too much about or against ourselves. It's not only the usual suspects, but step by step, show the added value, and then I think it will work. Not the big treaty reform, comprehensive treaty reform. That won't work.
Thank you. Mr. Gozi.
Yeah, 3 points. First of all, yes, Sven is right. We talk a lot about foreign policy, but I mean, unanimity is there to prevent us from having a meaningful discussion and a democratic discussion on the multi-annual financial framework, where we have not only wait for unanimity in the Council with only an ancillary role of the European Parliament, but also we have to wait for national ratification. Basically, when we plan our future in economic terms, it's like if we ratify each time a new international treaty, and it doesn't make sense. So this unanimity should apply there. On some aspect of taxation, at least linked to the single market, which has become increasingly a problem, I mean, we cannot do anything because it's unanimity. So, I mean, there are many other examples which are sensitive for our public debate, where unanimity should be removed beyond the issue of foreign policy. Second point, let me recall you what happened a while ago in 1985. Because today everybody is saying that it is impossible to open the treaty issue because unanimity is required of the member state. Unanimity is required to end the process, not to launch the process. The process in 1985 was launched by simple majority. when Thatcher went to the European Council, the informal European Council of Milan, she was sure that they wouldn't have launched the treaty revision process, which would have brought to the single European Act, because you say, of course, it's by consensus. Only there were a certain Andreotti, a certain Bettino Craxi, together with Delors, Kohl, and Mitterrand, who read the treaty. And after the reading of the treaty, they discover that the revision process is launched by simple majority of the members of the European Council. So at the end of the informal discussion in Milan in 1985, Andreotti drew the conclusion that there was a majority to launch the revision process. This has brought to the Single European Act. Without Single European Act, there wouldn't be the single market. You know who was the most satisfied leader at the end of the process? Margaret Thatcher, the one who opposed the process at the beginning. So, I mean, we need only 14 members of the European Council out of 27 to launch the process, and I think we should launch the process because we should open a debate, and because, last point, I'm sure that there would be a group of countries who would push for some specific indispensable reform, and I think that this group of countries, at the end, will be followed by everybody. And in any case, the treaty reform must allow a Europe of free will. We must make it simpler for the group of countries who wants to deepen their integration to do so, without obliging the countries who do not wish to deepen their integration not to follow. So that if those countries are perfectly happy with the current state of the Union, so it be for them. But they cannot prevent other countries from deepening the integration. It is this Europe of free political will that we should aim to build up also with the treaty revision.
So, are there any other questions? We are in the second round. We can accept 2 brief questions. We have still 8 minutes. Yes? 3 questions. Try to be brief, please.
Hi there, Garvin Walsh from the Martin Centre. If I may, I would like to launch a little provocation at the panel, which is, we've been having these discussions for quite a while, and they always run into the problems of vetoes, and they run into the problem of the political agenda, which is that national leaders don't want to spend time discussing European reform, which they think is a subject that's quite distant from what their people care about. But I think there might be a way to sort of square this circle a bit, which is to do defense first. We are in a situation of extreme security vulnerability, with the significant possibility that the United States might actually abandon Europe. There's the secret memo, there's the willingness to give up SACEUR. There are other statements from various leaks and even official speeches by the Vice President. So why not go and build, and make the main thing to do, build a defense union, build it as a separate organization, but build it without vetoes, so that it can then be expanded back for other areas of integration as needed. And we no longer have the possibility of one member state being able to block progress.
Good question, and at the same time, nice remark. Next question.
Ja, vielen Dank. Meine Frage richtet sich vor allem an Herrn Kalina, aber dann später auch an die anderen. Und zwar haben Sie viel für politischen Streit plädiert. Aber wie können wir sicherstellen, in einem teilweise sehr durch rechtspopulistische Propaganda aufgeladenen öffentlichen Diskurs, dass das eben nicht in eine Politisierung umschlägt, die dann eher antieuropäisch ist, gerade weil wir für eine Ratifizierung von Vertragsreformen teilweise an Referenden und damit an die Öffentlichkeit gebunden sind. Und dann daran anknüpfend, wie schafft man es, eine breitere europäische Öffentlichkeit herzustellen? Also es gab ja diese European Citizen Initiative, aber die ist auch, glaube ich, nur in gewissen Teilen stark wahrgenommen worden. Aber wie schafft man das noch auf eine breitere Grundlage zu stellen und mehr Leute damit in die europäische Politik mit einzubinden?
And the last question, the madam from the last bench.
Okay, thank you. So, Edita Skora, I'm from the European Parliament. Well, my question is a little bit about how, but basically rather about with which money. So, as rightly Mr. Freund remarked before, mentioned, to do the treaty change, to deeper the Europe, the integration, we need money, and obviously I know and I'm aware of the fact that we are working on resources and new resources, and one day we will for sure make it happen, but today it's not the case. And even if it happens one day, we all know that a Commission has a new vision of how the budget should look like in the next 7 years. So that's actually my question. How would you like to make people loyal? How would you like to make people adhere to this project if we cut cohesion funds and everything which is actually made for the regions?
Thank you very much. And now the final round of answers. Ladies first, Madam Dobrev.
And thank you very much, because I have to run away because we have a very important voting about the next MFF, about the money. Where should it come from? We need more money. We need double the size. But everyone will answer the questions, but let me put another focus on it. And maybe it's going to be a little bit answer for your remark, which is very important. This debate is going to be politicized, whether we want it or not. This debate about future of Europe, about treaty change, or as I wish, about the new European Constitution, is going to be politicized and not simply about technical policy issues on what we agree, because we are not alone, because they are enemies of this European project and this European integration. And these are, we have seen what Russia is doing in Austria in the last few years, with money, with people, with political influence, in Germany, with the far right and with all financing all those people. I mean, I don't have to go far away, because I have a prime minister back home who is directly financed by Putin, and his mission is to destroy the European Union. So we are not alone. And the worst case is, you know, this whole signal scandal, what we saw last week. It's not simply this absolute idiotism where you actually endanger the life of hundreds of soldiers, among them American soldiers, with being so unprofessional. But you know that part when they spoke about Europe with such a hate and disrespect. And this is now the Republican leadership, and unfortunately this is now the American leadership. So this debate is going to be politicized, because they are very strong forces who want Europe to be weak. They are very strong who want us not to be united. So the only way how we can win this debate, if we do politics as well, not only policy questions, but we do politics, we give people hope, and we give somehow a future to believe in it. I think this is our task. So don't be afraid of being politicized. Politicize it better than the far right and those who are the enemies of the European project.
Thank you, Clara. Mr. Freund.
I would say, Clara, the one good thing about those signal messages and the disdain of Vance and others for Europe is they actually think we're one country. So in that sense, European federalism is way more progressed with them than it really is and than we often think. I like the idea, and I mean a bit in my opening statement, I said that defense is the obvious hook now to have that debate. I think it shouldn't sort of replace the rest of it. And I'm not sure I would, as a first step, try to do it outside the Union, because I obviously, as a member of this Parliament, think that the European Parliament and the only directly elected body of the Union should have its word. I also think that ultimately the solutions we choose, I mean, the reason I'm so convinced about parliamentary democracy and the European Parliament's role in this is it brings better solutions. You know, when we have a debate here in this House, we come up with better solutions than if just the 27 heads of state and government sit together and cook something up. That's why I think democracy is better than any other form of of government. So absolutely, let's use that hook, but let's open the debate. One thing just still, if you look at the United States, if you look at Russia, if you find me one person that suggests that it would be a better system for the US to decide on their budget by giving a veto to every of the 50 states, if you find me one person in Russia that says that giving a veto to their 49 regions on foreign policy decisions would be somehow better, how anyone still thinks that that is an adequate way of doing the MFF or foreign policy in Europe, it puzzles me. It puzzles me.
Yeah, to the two questions. Yes, I agree. I think we should now start with defense. There are three possibilities of doing so. The first is blocked by unanimity because we could use Article 42 of the treaty, but we know that would be blocked by at least one member state. But we could use also Article 46 of the treaty and launch a permanent and structured cooperation in defense. This clause has been used so far only for specific industrial projects, but in my view, it has a strong strategic potential, and it could be activated to create this group of willing countries willing and capable countries to move ahead in defense. And that could be really, it could really trigger a wider process of political integration, because I do not believe that we can integrate ourselves in defense without tackling the issue of political governance and also democratic accountability and supervision. If we do not, this is why I insist in this moment that, we should stop, the summit at variable geometry are very important because they prove that we have sense of urgency and that we are answering to the challenges of Ukraine, of Trump, of Putin. But we should start to stabilize those, at least from the European Union perspective, creating this group of countries and using the treaties. Then the other option is, as you said, to do it outside the treaty, as we did it with the Schengen Convention, after all, and then to insert it. It is an option. I think that we could push to use Article 46 and to do it immediately now. On the issue of cohesion policy and the budget, I think it's exactly one of the reasons why we need to reform the Union before unifying the Union, before the enlargement. There are some reforms which require treaty revision, some other reforms require only political will. It is clear that cohesion policy and agricultural policy are the two policies that we must reform before enlarging, because I think it would be unfair and it would be politically suicide to explain to our farmer or to our regions that, what, you have half of the money because we have unified the continent, but we have decided not to modify one single line of the agricultural policy and not one single line on cohesion policy. You understand that it doesn't make sense. And you understand that we can't waste time. And you understand that if the Spinelli-Gruppe is pushing for treaty revision and more generally reforms, be it through treaty revision or without treaty revision, it's because we take it seriously, the challenge of unifying the continent, but we take seriously also the challenge of our citizens, our voters, and our territories. And I am amazed that there is always someone who raises a little finger and say, no, it's not the time, it's not possible to modify the treaty of the common policy. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And that, it is clear the role of the European Parliament to push toward the direction, because this is going to happen. But it must happen in the proper way, in the structured way, with a proper debate before, and not with with some little fudge solution 1 month before deciding the enlargement. Because this is the risk. And this would be a very high risk for the future of our Union.
Mr. Simon.
First question on defense. I also thought that was the most obvious where we could proceed. But I tell you an experience from the last 5 years. When the war of aggression against Ukraine started, we proposed to Commissioner Dombrovskis to come up with a Land-Lease Act so that the Ukraine could have bought weapons on the European market with all the money they want to have. The Commission first thought that was a good idea. And then the French thought, no, that's not a good idea, because maybe the German companies are better prepared and they have more weapons, or they are quicker, then all the money would go to Germany. Maybe vice versa, that you can exchange this argument. So, and then I tried to find out what is the reason that the Europeans spend 100 billion euros maybe we waste, that we don't have a common procurement in the defense industry. 80% of the weapons we gave to Ukraine we bought outside the European market. It's totally stupid and not efficient. So, and then I digged a little bit deeper. 6 reasons I found out. First, the development of a weapon system starts with the definition of a security risk, and that traditionally was done different by France, more in the African former colonies, Sahara region or so, and by the Baltic states or Poland, maybe Germany, more from the Russian side. And you need different weapon systems for different security risks. Second, education of army has to do with weapons, totally differently organized. Third, the defense industry of France, more state-owned, is totally different from the German, more private. Fourth, money and legitimization of national politicians. We must think European, but we are legitimized in our member states. So I would have to explain Rolls-Royce, for example, which is close to Frankfurt, we will shut down this factory because that is now in the future produced in France. Difficult. Fifth, the United States doesn't want us to have a common defense industry because they love the situation that we buy 80% mainly in the United States. And finally, sadly, we don't trust each other. From a Polish perspective, they would always trust NATO and even Trump more, that he defends them when the Russians come than the Germans. And there's also, unfortunately, some truth in that. My answer would still be, let's get better funding in the existing system, EDF, EDIRPA, and so on and so forth. Second question, ja, also das, was einfach mir dann doch immer wieder so ein bisschen Sorge bereitet, ist, wir dürfen nicht aus Angst vor einem politischen Diskurs irgendwie so tun, als ob wir keine Debatte führen. Heute hat meine eigene Fraktion irgendeinen Tagesordnungspunkt abgelehnt. Ach ja, die Reaktionen auf die Zölle von Trump. Übrigens auch, darüber müssten wir diskutieren, denn wir belügen uns ja zu oft selbst. Ich meine, auf Pickups und Nutzfahrzeuge gibt es schon 25% Zölle. Die Europäer erheben 10% Zölle auf US-amerikanische Autos, weitgehend unbekannt. Und unser Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, dieser Grenzausgleichsmechanismus, weil wir von diesem Klimathema da irgendwie überzeugt sind, wird in der ganzen Welt auch als rein protektionistische Maßnahme gesehen. Und natürlich ist das eine Art Zoll, den wir dort erheben. Also wir belügen uns zu viel selbst. Aber wir brauchen eine politische Debatte über alles. Ich meine, das, was Herr Kalina mit politischer Debatte gemeint hat, war ja auch gar nicht primär pro EU oder gegen EU, sondern in der Sache an den verschiedenen politischen Themen. Und da fehlt es uns, weil wir es in diesem Haus nicht hinbekommen, eine Debatte zu organisieren, so wie hier. Ja, das gelingt einfach nicht. Sobald wir raus aus dem Plenum sind, sobald die Öffentlichkeit weitgehend weg ist, gelingt es. Wenn wir dieselbe Debatte im Ausschuss mit Webstream haben, gelingt es nicht. Wenn wir das abschalten, gelingt es besser. Aber es gelingt eben nicht öffentlich. Das ist ein Riesenproblem. Und eben auch, wie das Plenum organisiert ist und welche Themen dort eine Rolle spielen, das ist einfach sehr, sehr schade. Aber wir müssen diskutieren, und ich bin auch der festen Überzeugung, dass wir die besseren Argumente haben. Die proeuropäischen Kräfte haben die besseren Argumente. Wenn allerdings die Kritik der nicht so ganz überzeugten oder antieuropäischen Kräfte komplett negiert wird oder ignoriert wird, dann werden wir niemanden überzeugen. Also, dass es Probleme gibt, das ist schon so. Aber grundsätzlich als Demokrat muss man immer auch denken, vielleicht hat der andere ja doch recht. Und das gilt bis hin zu den Fragen, dass wir viel zu wenig über das Sanktionsregime diskutieren oder wie wir eben andere Politiken kontrovers diskutieren könnten. Maybe the most problematic one is then the third one, cohesion funds. There is an obvious split between East and West, but I think if we would set up a new budget today, we wouldn't think about 1/3 using for agricultural sector and then such huge amount for cohesion. I think we would more invest in AI and innovation, technology, science in this direction, but I think we will find enough common interests to reform also the budget.
And the honor to conclude today's debate will go to Professor Kalina.
Vielen Dank. Die 2 letzten Punkte greife ich kurz auf. Ja, Verteidigungsunion, glaube ich, ist das Momentum, wie wir vorangehen können. bei den budgetären Sachen bin ich bei dem, was Herr Simon gesagt hat. Lassen Sie mich auf die Frage mit dem politischen Streit zurückkommen und dessen Potenzial. Ich glaube, gerade wenn wir es schaffen, dass die Debatten im Europäischen Parlament a. politisierter werden und b. auch nach außen stärker getragen werden, dann bannen wir gerade die Gefahr, dass die Debatten außer Ruder laufen. Weil wir sind momentan in einer Situation, und ich überzeichne, damit ich die Botschaft schnell rüberbringen kann, dass die Öffentlichkeit die parlamentarische Willensbildung nicht nachvollziehen kann. Sie weiß, es wird etwas verhandelt, dann kommt ein Ergebnis. Und wenn man mit dem Ergebnis nicht zufrieden ist, stellt man sich gegen das Parlament, ist de facto antieuropäisch, man hat keinen Anschlusspunkt. Wenn stattdessen viel mehr politischen Streit auf der parlamentarischen Ära gibt, der nach außen getragen wird, merkt man, naja, da läuft der Streit. Das sind die Argumente. Und dann machen Sie nicht eine zusätzliche Streitdimension europäische Institutionen versus Bevölkerung, sondern im Rahmen der europäischen Institutionen politischer Wettbewerb, wie er sein soll. Und dieser Streit ist noch modifizierter und moderater als der nach außen getragen wird, weil auf der parlamentarischen Bühne geht es in der Regel mit Anstand zu. Sie haben eine Moderation, die darauf schaut, dass die Werte und die Legitimation gewahrt ist und dass der Streit um die politische Sache geht. Und das wäre wirklich für mich so eine Chance, die Debatten auch außerhalb des Parlaments hinauszutragen, und zwar nicht, dass sie eskalieren, sondern dass sie an der Sache bleiben. Natürlich nicht zu 100%, aber gegenüber dem Status quo, glaube ich, wäre das eine wunderbare Fortentwicklung. Und doch mal mein zweiter Punkt, den ich heute schon gesagt habe, wir sollten uns nicht dahinter verstecken und sagen, naja, das können wir jetzt nicht machen, weil wir brauchen eine Vertragsreform. Es gibt sehr viele Stellschrauben, und auch bei den Mehrheitsentscheidungen, die wir immer wieder angesprochen haben, wir haben Passerellklauseln. Wenn wir den politischen Willen haben im Europäischen Parlament, aber vor allem interinstitutionell, dann lässt sich sehr viel erreichen. Und deswegen sollten wir angesichts der jetzigen Situation des Zeitdrucks handeln, die große Reform nicht aus den Augen verlieren, aber da, wo wir die Stellschrauben justieren können, jetzt sofort justieren. Das wäre mein Plädoyer von außen.
Thank you very much for very fruitful and nice discussion. We went over time, so thank you very much as well to the translators that they stayed additional 15 minutes. I hope we initiated at least small debates around your hometowns, how European future will evolve, and this will be one of the beginnings for the better European future. Thank you very much and have a nice day.